Okay, good morning. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Kim Crider, founding partner at Elara Nova, and I am so excited to be here today with some really amazing guests that I've known for a long time, and so happy to have with me to talk to you about dual-use innovation and some of the obstacles and I guess some of the opportunities that we see in this area of dual-use innovation for space. Joining me today, we have Melanie Stricklan. Melanie is the co-founder and CEO of Slingshot Aerospace. And prior to joining Slingshot, we're going to hear a lot more about her amazing company. Melanie proudly served in the United States Air Force for 21 years, during which she logged over 1,500 flight hours onboard ground surveillance aircraft, commanded experimental spacecraft missions, and led the development of space control technologies for the Department of Defense. Thanks for joining us, Melanie.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. And then also with us today, we have Jordan Noone. Jordan is an American aerospace engineer and the founding CTO of Relativity Space. He's now a general partner at Embedded Ventures, which he co-founded in 2020 with Jenna Bryant. Thanks so much for joining us, Jordan.
Thanks, Kim. I'm happy to be here. And it was great seeing Greg right before this. He was one of my early professors in college and a longtime mentor.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, Jordan, let's start with you. Excuse me. I mentioned Embedded Ventures, an organization that you started in 2020. Talk to us a little bit about this. Why did you start Embedded Ventures, and what was your going-in thesis that prompted you coming out of Relativity Space to jump into the investor pool with regards to dual-use innovation for space?
Yeah, we started Embedded in 2020. I'd been Chief Technology Officer of Relativity for about 5 years before then. We started Relativity back in 2015. And a lot of my experience at Relativity shaped what I wanted to do next on the investment side. And that was very much rooted in the lack of technical depth and lack of operator experience in the aerospace defense investor base. It's something where when we started Relativity and doing launch, there were so few investors that were even willing to look at launch at that time. You know, fast forward to 2020 when launch is mature, commercial launch is becoming an everyday thing, commercial landings becoming an everyday thing. But there's so few investors that'll even stretch from understanding launch, which was starting to become mature, into looking at what happens next as launch costs come down. How does the ecosystem transform? How does the Pentagon play in? How does the rest of the US government and international governments play in? And that's something that, you know, from our perspective, took a lot of firsthand experience in order to evaluate those companies well, especially to evaluate them early before the market was really looking at them. So we took myself, Jenna's background on the operator side, combined that together into Embedded Ventures. We invest in national security, space technologies, split between space infrastructure, advanced manufacturing, and digital engineering, just kind of software for the hardware design side. And have been exploring that since starting.
Outstanding. Thank you, Jordan, for that background. Melanie, so you started Slingshot Aerospace, which has really been a phenomenal startup success in its own right, and gets at many of the areas that Jordan touched on as being so critical to our national security space capabilities. Tell us a little bit more about Slingshot and what has been the basis for your success, and where are you now?
Yeah, thank you. It has been a journey, a very exciting journey. We started back in 2017 whenever I retired from the Air Force. And we're a space tech company, and we develop data simulation, analytics products to really optimize spaceflight missions, reduce on-orbit risk, and really enhance situational awareness for governments and private space organizations globally. You know, back in 2017 when we started, we couldn't foresee how much the uncertainty and risk on orbit would increase, but we knew one thing for sure, that reusables were going to happen. And in that coming to fruition, we would see a need for a digital infrastructure necessary to hold and carry the amount of things going up on orbit, and also address the space flight mission operation complexities centered around not just the hardware on orbit, but really how does the assets that we have on orbit and those defunct satellites and that debris environment, how does that all work or not work along the lines of the growing complexities in the crowded radio frequency spectrum? How does it work with even more massive growth over the next 10 years as this market just explodes? And how does it work with the continuous and persistent geopolitical aggression that's going on orbit that many of us aren't aware of? And how do we reduce and mitigate that risk? And so that's what we do today. You ask, what are we doing today? What's happening right now? You may or may not know, but almost a year ago, we made two very accretive acquisitions that have really led to a very robust platform that Slingshot Aerospace has on market today. And it's fed by millions of observations from a global sensor network that we acquired from Numerica Space. It's also fed with the most robust satellite and launch database in the world. And that's just what it's fed with, alongside ephemeris data from our freemium product called Slingshot Beacon, which is the world's first space coordination system. So there's a lot going on right now. But through these very accretive acquisitions, Slingshot's product suite truly accelerated far more than I could have even imagined as we pursued those acquisitions. But we've become the go-to commercial space surveillance and tracking provider, really for all orbital regimes and across commercial, defense, and civil organizations globally. That's where we are today. And what led to that success, I think, was the third question that you put in there. And it's really a very unique end-to-end offering with a vision that many others don't have in the market today. And it's a comprehensive offering of data, algorithms as a service, analytics as a service, simulations as a service, fed dynamically with live operational data of what's going on today, right this minute, on orbit. And that leading intellectual property, over 17 patents and counting, has really put us in a differentiated position and helped us be the market leading team. We've got more than 130 members of a very diverse technical and diverse background, driving that innovation in product and execution. We've got 68 cleared employees. That bench is really a deep bench. These all have led to our success, but really the biggest indicator of our success is the trust and the reach that the team and technology have. The folks that we put our trust into as a nation trust us with our capability. Our software is really the gold standard for the industry. It's used by the 18th Space Defense Squadron and the National Space Defense Center. We've got deep inroads at the highest levels of the United States space policy making across the White House, NASA, Department of Commerce. The U.S. Space Force, and our team culture has really allowed for that trust to be cultivated. We've got a team of teams, belief system here, and we check our ego at the door every single day and put the customer at the center of everything that we do. And so those are the things that have led to our success. Thanks for all three questions.
Yeah, for sure. Well, your success is no surprise based on all of those capabilities that you've pulled together to provide such a critical set of services. I mean, as you mentioned, the infrastructure, the data, the sensing capabilities, the go-to capability for national security space, and also in support of commercial, civil, weather, all the users, all the providers of space in what is increasingly becoming a congested and contested environment. And we really have to understand what's going on out there. You know, having been the prior Chief Technology Innovation Officer for the Space Force before I retired in 2021, I know how critical these needs are, and the value of what you're providing is absolutely important. So thank you. Thank you to your team for the dedicated effort that you're providing and the focus that you have.
Thank you.
You bet. Jordan, let's circle back a little bit based on what we just heard from Slingshot. While Slingshot is providing such phenomenal capabilities that our nation absolutely needs, and again, not just for national security purposes, which are so important and so important to you, I know from an investment standpoint, as you've said, but also for commercial purposes with more commercial interest in space. But yet we see a market out there that has gotten a little bit messy right? In terms of how investors and innovators are really coming together, and what the level of investment is. It's been very high, and now it seems to be, a little tepid, if you will. What do you see is going on here, and what are some of the opportunities and challenges for innovation and the innovation ecosystem in today's market?
It's been a messy couple years. And as far as the foundation there, I think a lot of that came from recklessness coming, post-COVID and during the COVID investment era from 2020, 2021. And space is an interesting investment sector because there's a lot of hype. There's a lot of literal kind of smoke and fire. Then that gets people excited, but that excitement can lead towards chasing bad opportunities, essentially, and filtering through those is necessary in order to see the good investments that aren't just the really hyped up ones. And that's something we're all feeling the repercussions of that cycle happening, as so many space companies, especially the ones that went through SPACs in 2020, 2021, early 2022, then we're seeing them crash and burn literally live. And that's something that's really unfortunate to see. There's tons of hard work that went into those companies. And I'd say a lot of investor recklessness there that led towards unsustainable growth, bad business practices, less attention on fundamental cash flow and business growth, and more on this kind of excitement and hype cycle that was never going to be sustainable. I think everyone in the ecosystem knew it was not going to be sustainable. Just no one wanted to say that first.
Yeah.
And that leads us to a spot today where, a lot of the investment, on a private side, the venture capital side, it depends on an expectation of what is the exit outcome. How much can a company exit for? Because that drives expectations for where the growth investors entering, where the mid-stage investors entering, where the early stage investors entering. And it sets a precedent for price across the entire ecosystem. And when there isn't an expectation on exit outcome, there aren't companies IPOing or SPACing today. There's not a significant amount. Then it puts uncertainty on everyone as far as, do we just wait until there's a new standard, a new precedent there? But it's unknown on how much time that'll take.
Yeah. Do you see an opportunity ahead?
Absolutely. There are still good opportunities. There's still good companies. It takes a lot of work to find and filter through those. And they're often not, the hyped up most, companies that are raising at, insanely high valuations that aren't sustainable. That's where we rely on our team to dig through and find those companies that aren't being chased by everyone. Because sometimes those are good companies, and sometimes they're just the ones with the best kind of smoke and mirrors out there. But it's finding good companies with good sustainable growth, the attention on cash flows and customers. And Slingshot's a great example of that, as far as one that has, a real growing customer base that is resulting with a better and better business every day. And we've been working with the Slingshot team since 2021 or so now.
Yeah, for sure. So there's hope out there. And thankfully we see phenomenal companies like Slingshot that are continuing to grow and continuing to attract investors like yourselves for their growth, because our nation needs those capabilities. But Melanie, from your perspective, what challenges and opportunities do you see for dual use innovation? And not just from the standpoint of investment, but you can certainly speak to that if you like to, but just in the entire innovation ecosystem where you operate, what are some of the challenges you see in getting your innovations moved forward?
Yeah, first, thank you, Jordan, for the kind words and the support through the years. And certainly there are many challenges. With every challenge, I always encourage the team to find a solution to the challenge and also an opportunity to go along with that. So as far as the challenges, first and foremost, I think one of the biggest challenges we all face is that China and Russia and other smaller nations have really strategically sought to gain asymmetric advantage, modernizing everything in their militaries and their commercial entities. And a lot of times those things are mixed. They've taken consumer grade and business application technology and applied that to their military use very, very quickly. Their spending has been really concentrated on software effectiveness, autonomy, AI, all of those things. So from a challenge perspective, that is one of the largest challenges, or one of the most important challenges that our government faces today. And having started Slingshot to help solve the problem centered on this around space, and then democratize that to commercial dual use technology, we have to think about the other challenges that coexist with that. And I'll get to the opportunities in a second, but one of those challenges is really regulatory hurdles. So dual use technology is often subject to very strict regulations on how you take that to market globally. It's because those are potential military applications, and as such, there should be some barriers to entry to slow the use around those that aren't necessarily the friendliest. But those regulatory hurdles really can confine a fast-paced, accelerated, innovative company in our especially here in the United States. There's security concerns, and all of these challenges are I would say they're a good thing, right? They're a good thing for national security, et cetera. But the thing that we have to do is navigate these. And oftentimes the most innovative companies don't have the ability to navigate, regulatory hurdles, security concerns. There's an inherent risk with these technologies falling into the wrong hands that we just talked about. And really stringent security measures are necessary to prevent this. That is a challenge that slows companies like Slingshot down sometimes. If you don't know how to navigate those. The R&D cost, and this is what Jordan spoke about a little bit ago, is getting that venture capital, private equity, insertion of capital, and sometimes dilutive capital, a lot of times dilutive capital, to coexist with the non-dilutive capital from the US government. Still, that R&D cost can be heavy for a high-tech need, and we have to be able to survive the macroeconomic headwinds that the world is facing today in order to get the investment to accelerate those R&D efforts and really get the capability in the right hands. And then that just coincides with market uncertainty. So dual use technologies can cater both to military and commercial sectors, and should, but with the uncertainty and fluctuation of demand in times like this can be challenging. Now then, the opportunities that go across all of those are vast. I mean, the market expansion, we talk about the market uncertainty, but there's market expansion capabilities. If you truly build dual use technologies, you've got the potential to expand not just within the defense markets with the plural, but also the commercial markets. But again, you have to know how to navigate ITAR, EAR, those types of things that protect our U.S. superiority. And then the technology advancements that you get from working with the United States government, due to the high stakes and complexity of use cases that they face, are the best advancements to take and democratize to the commercial world. A lot of people don't understand that. But that cross-pollination of ideas that you get from the development of those dual use technologies really encourages the sharing of ideas and methodologies across to the commercial sector, at least in our sector, which is the space operational domain. So certainly lots of challenges, lots of opportunities, and the biggest winners are those that understand and know how to navigate those challenges and turn them into opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. And you've been doing that for a long time. But the threat doesn't go away, right? So what you started off with, I think, is fundamental, that the threat doesn't go away. The threat just continues to be a challenge that we have to work through. And the opportunity is that we see the need for and the advancement of innovation that is going to help us all contend with those threats, because the space capabilities that we have are so critical to our way of life. And the other thing that I want to point out, what you said here is so important, I think, for our audience to have a keen ear to, is when the government does put money behind some of the kinds of capabilities that are critical to addressing the threat, or fully understanding what's going on in the space domain from a space surveillance, an intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance perspective, and some of the kinds of things that we talked about earlier that Slingshot does, those capabilities are really well developed. And therefore, the leap over into a commercial application becomes that much more straightforward, because that core investment, has really enabled those capabilities to be, optimized. And now commercial investors can take note of that as the market continues to expand, as you mentioned, the growth and opportunity continues to become clear, because we all need these capabilities. We all rely on these kinds of capabilities. Those capabilities we know are certainly a worthwhile investment. Jordan, let's go back to you. And this is really a question that I'm going to ask both of you to touch on, but I'll start with you, Jordan, because I'd be interested in your thoughts here from the perspective of the government and its ability to incentivize and advance dual use innovation, and how investors might take note of that. So we've seen some efforts by the government to incentivize dual use innovation, namely programs such as what we call StratFi and TACFi, and the newly established Office of Strategic Capital. What do you think of these efforts, and are they well positioned to encourage innovation and investment?
Absolutely. I think both of the programs you mentioned are some of the best designed programs within the US government today for encouraging innovation and national security. It's one of the bigger challenges we face, and Mel touched on it in various ways as well, that in the US, we don't have a direct control economy. We have the freedom to invest in areas of our choice. And that's something where you see a lot of passion investors or people who are aware of national security threats who come into the national security investment space, but you don't get the person that's looking to generate the highest returns. Aerospace defense, it's not SaaS, it's not kind of the software paradigm that has led the last 20 years of venture investing. And that's something that puts us at risk versus economies that have direct control on where their innovation capital is being spent. Threats like China, where that is a very different case as far as encouraging that innovation. We have to encourage that innovation here and that innovation spend from the private capital base. So having mechanisms within the US government that are attractive to these startups and their growth, then not just from a national security contractual perspective, but a private capital attraction perspective, is something that I think is necessary. Where if in the US you're not winning over the private investor, you're not really moving anything. And so using those mechanisms like StratFi, TACFi within those startups, I'll let Mel touch base more on those, but then the recent development and maturity of the Office of Strategic Capital to support private funds and encouraging them to invest in national security relevant technologies through essentially levered up debt mechanisms that the US government has, is a great way to make those opportunities more attractive to the private investor than them going to low risk SaaS or other investment areas.
Yeah, thank you for that. Melanie, what is your experience with these programs? And what would you say are the benefits of them?
A couple of things. One, it really was a breakthrough for the innovation arm of the services. We are fortunate enough to have one with the Space Force, and one, it gives us, we designed that contract in a way, working with the government contracting officers and program managers in a way that reflected more of a recurring revenue model and allowed us to, accelerate the development on our watch. And so it allowed the investors that have been alongside us, like Jordan's team and others, to come along and match the government investment, and the Small Business Association coming in and matching to some degree as well. And so you get this non-dilutive capital insertion from the government alongside the venture capitalists to truly accelerate that R&D and get it into a commercial state that the government can then, and I think we're going to talk about this challenge a little bit, take into operationalized environments and leverage at a much more cost-saving, cost-effective manner than something that was built with a different type of acquisition system not geared towards software, not geared towards speed. So it's been a wonderful capability. I'll call it a capability. Anytime you've got a contract vehicle with the government, you should consider it a capability in and of itself. But that has led to multiple work streams, multiple new contract opportunities as well, and getting some capability operationalized faster than I've ever seen.
Outstanding. So with all of that, that's wonderful. But let's kind of look at the flip side a little bit here, and we'll start with you, Melanie, and then go back to Jordan. What more could be done, should be done to promote investments in dual use innovation?
I think there's two things. There's a couple aspects for the government and a couple aspects for the U.S. venture, and specifically the U.S. venture capital and private equity centers here. I'll start with the government for the purpose of really bringing state-of-the-art and next generation technologies to our Space Force, to our military services, and to stay competitive along, competitive with those opponents that I mentioned earlier, China and Russia being two of the largest. The DoD and the IC really need to foster a supportive environment for software-centric companies. Although we've got hardware, our delivery is software. Our delivery are the insights that come off of that software, that data platform, that simulation engine. To do this, the government really has to understand the issues at hand that need to be addressed, the problems that need to be addressed, and be able to articulate the problem rather than focusing centrically on requirements generation and technical specifications to solve the problem. Let the most innovative companies in the world here in the United States help solve those problems. But in order to solve the problem, we have to articulate and rank stack those problems. And then the software first approach will be integral to the future of the space operating domain and to the other services' biggest issues. Regarding the government's approach, we also need to expand beyond the R&D aspects. So these programs are wonderful: StratFi, TACFi, DIU, OTAs through SPEC. I could go on and on and on. But really, from my perspective, having been a patron of those, a client, so to speak, of those vehicles, I believe that the government should consider something similar to get over the valley of death and think about the operationalization and the fielding side of those investments. It's concerning fact that 2/3 of the major weapon system procurements that are done today through the DoD are typically bid on by one single company, and the company is usually one of the top 10 major defense prime companies. So that limited innovation, it really stifles the incentive for technology companies that are at the heart of speed and acceleration that could bring that capability forward and really help leapfrog our global superiority issues. I think that's got to be addressed. It's got to be rectified. Just as we started rectifying the R&D side, we need to reconcile and foster a more competitive environment that will ensure faster technological advancements, especially with software-centric capabilities that this country has in its innovation base today.
Yeah,
the other side of that.
Go ahead.
Sorry for the lengthy answer. The other side of that is the investment community in the U.S. The investment landscape wasn't always the way it is today. Silicon Valley was founded by those U.S. patriots that weren't just putting in investment for financial gain and profit, but they also wanted to ensure that the country remained superiority on the global scale and could sustain democracy. And so their goal was to spread that and to ensure that stuck. Today, it's a little bit different, but I would encourage investors to change or to improve their strategy, not to merely support commercial companies that have products that can be modified for military use, but instead, or in addition to, rather, they should revert to that approach that initially made the U.S. a global leader investing in technology companies that are solving the military's most intricate problems and outpacing traditional defense industrial-based innovations. And by doing so, they will ensure that those capabilities can get democratized to a commercial market advancement faster and better than the opposite. And so I think that we can bring cutting edge technology to our Space Force and armed services much faster if both the investment community and the government work more with incentive structures that allow for smaller companies, startups, the innovation accelerators of this nation to come forward and be incentivized to do business with the government.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that rich answer. Investment community and government working hand in hand to bring these most critical capabilities all the way through, as you mentioned, through transition into operationalization, and the critical importance of that in solving our nation's biggest challenges. Jordan, what are your thoughts on that? And on that and any other things that you think more could be done to enhance dual use innovation?
That was a great comprehensive answer by Mel as far as the disconnect after the R&D phase within the Pentagon. I'd say that's our biggest challenge to highlight, and Mel covered many of the points on it, where you see companies that they get a phase 1, a phase 2, a strat-fi, a TAC-fi maybe before that. And that has all been very well developed and matured. There's still the challenges in there, but compared to where it was, 10, 20 years ago, there's significant startup exposure within those programs. Then huge win for everyone involved. But then there's a question of what happens next. Then when you start transitioning out of R&D within the Pentagon and you start looking at procurement, like the tie between those two groups is surprisingly high within the Pentagon. And that's something that handover is then tricky, because you're wanting someone, to get connected between those two groups. We even ourselves have seen us connecting people within the Pentagon where the relevant R&D folk don't even know the relevant procurement folk. And that's something where we may know both. We try to help our portfolio or internal to the Pentagon where we can because of that. But that lack of direct tie and handover mechanism is where that early success with those programs, kind of maturing at the strat-fi phase, it gets very difficult for that to become a program of record. There's very few examples of that happening. So I'd say that's the number one issue we're tracking, is how do you get from strat-fi and the amazing, success that has been the strat-fi TAC-fi program, then into programs of record that carries these companies from being generally kind of early growth phase, early commercialization phase, into truly competitive with the primes. And that mechanism for handover just doesn't exist today. And again, I'd say that's the number one issue that we track as far as within the health of that startup community, is that R&D procurement disconnect in the Pentagon.
Yeah, definitely a challenge that we know that continually needs to be worked. Some good things have been done, but certainly more work needs to be done in these areas. Well, I'm so sad. We're just about at the end of our time here. And we've talked a lot about, some of these really tough challenges and obstacles to dual use innovation. We've talked a little bit about the opportunities as well, though. So that's great. I would like to wrap up here on that positive note and just give each of you a quick minute to talk about, what do you see looking forward? What encourages you the most about the future of space, the future of innovation for space, and the capabilities that can be brought forward here? So, Jordan, let's start with you, and then we'll wrap it up with Mel.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing time in the industry and in the investment side. As much as I can be, I can critique certain areas, and hopefully I didn't come off as like a Debbie Downer today in various ways. It's amazing founders building amazing companies and innovating, and then similarly, there's amazing champions within the Pentagon, within the U.S. government, that are trying to get everything moving forward and doing well at it. It's taken time, but again, you look back 10, 20 years, the ecosystem's completely different on interactions between U.S. government and startups, completely different on commercial capabilities that are being provided. into the defense sector. And that's something that keeps us motivated, that it's still a day-to-day, challenge and uphill battle on the investment side, on the fundraising side, on the startup operation side. There's nothing in the ecosystem that's, terribly easy right now. But that's what we all signed up for doing this, is that uphill kind of battle day to day, where, we'll look back on this in 4 or 5 years and see amazing companies coming out of what has been a very difficult, ecosystem right now, and macro environment generally driving that. But there's going to be big wins in the same way we saw, the big wins from commercial launch tracing back to, early success of SpaceX 20 years ago.
Yeah, definitely. Now, your final word here on what gives you the most encouragement looking ahead.
So much, so much. So first, the space sector is showing absolutely no signs of slowing down right now. The complexities continue to increase, which is good for our business operations, but also we want to make sure that we mitigate that risk with that growth on orbit. The constant evolution also with mega constellations going up and improved launch cadence, et cetera. That constant evolution really does ensure that it's that innovation is at the core of what gets us forward in this industry and in defense. So not just appreciated, innovation is not just appreciated, but it's fundamental. It's fundamentally required. It opens up vast opportunities for creative thinkers and companies like Slingshot. And second, the Department of Defense and IC communities have made those big strides in fostering innovation on the R&D side, and that will connect with the procurement side soon. The more people that are involved and have platforms like this, thank you, Kim, for the invite here, because these platforms are important to get the word out that we have to connect that R&D side with the procurement side. And lastly, despite the macroeconomic headwinds that the world is facing, that the tech community is facing, investors are really beginning to recognize the value of investing in defense-centric capabilities. Whereas when we started Slingshot Aerospace, it was very, very difficult to find those investors. But with the macroeconomic headwinds, they're starting to see that defense budgets are typically and often resilient in these types of cases. And even with the economic downturn that has turned a lot of dry powder off or investments off around the world, we've seen a degree of stability and growth expansion during these uncertain times. And so together, those factors don't just instill hope, but also generate very tangible opportunities to share with the investment community and the government on how we can all do better together.
Outstanding. Mel Stricklan, Slingshot Aerospace, Jordan Noone, Embedded Ventures, amazing founder, amazing investor. Thank you both for what you do for national security, space, and space innovation.